It started with a notification I almost ignored. I was 3 states away on a work trip, sitting in a bland hotel room, the kind with beige curtains and a TV that only half worked. My phone buzzed and the Doorbell camera app lit up. Normally, I'd swipe it away. 99 times out of 100, it was a delivery guy dropping off a package or a neighbor's cat triggering the motion sensor. But this time, something made me check. The screen showed my front porch at 9:30 at night. Too late for deliveries, too late for casual visits. And there he was, my best friend, Mark, standing at my front door, shifting his weight like he belonged there. A backpack slung over one shoulder. My wife opened the door, smiling in a way that hit me wrong, a little too warm, a little too practiced. They looked around quickly, then stepped inside. The door closed and the feed cut to black. I just sat there, phone in my hand, staring at the empty hotel wall. Mark. The guy who had stood beside me at my wedding. The guy who toasted our anniversaries, who promised me 100 times over, "Don't worry, brother, I'll look after her when you travel." And my wife, the woman I trusted with my life, welcoming him into my home at night while I was hundreds of miles away. My name is Ryan Miller. I'm 39 years old, a project manager in construction based out of Dallas, Texas. I've been married for 12 years, and for just as long, I've called Mark my closest friend. We grew up together, shared dorm rooms, shared heartbreaks, shared dreams. When I said best friend, I meant it. When I said wife, I thought it meant forever. I'm not a paranoid man. I travel often for work, sometimes weeks at a time, and I always believed I could leave home behind without a worry. Mark was supposed to be the one who kept an eye on things. Check the yard, grab the mail, maybe keep Emily company over dinner so she didn't feel alone. That's what best friends are for. That's what I believed. But as I replayed the clip over and over, my stomach tightened. His late-night visit wasn't casual. Her smile wasn't innocent. And that backpack on his shoulder wasn't just carrying mail. I didn't call her. I didn't call him. I didn't even throw my phone across the room, though God knows I wanted to. Instead, I hit save. The clip slid into my archive folder with a quiet click, a digital record that neither of them knew existed. That was the exact moment my life cracked in two. Before, I was a husband with a loyal wife and a best friend I trusted like a brother. After, I was a man holding proof that loyalty had left my house the second my door shut behind them. He said he'd look after her. My doorbell camera showed me exactly what that meant. Before that night in the hotel, before the doorbell camera turned my stomach upside down, I would have told anyone I had the kind of life you could depend on. Not flashy, not perfect, but steady. I had a career that paid the bills, a wife I thought I could trust, and a best friend who felt more like a brother than a buddy. That combination made me believe I was untouchable, that the foundation under my life was solid. Emily and I had been married 12 years. We met at a 4th of July barbecue a friend dragged me to when I didn't want to go. She was standing by the grill, hair pulled back, laughing at a joke I didn't even hear. But her laugh was what pulled me in. Within a year, we were inseparable. Within 3, we were married under the big oak tree in her parents' backyard. She was steady in some ways, organized, driven, but she was also playful in a way that balanced me out. She teased me for my color-coded schedules and the way I planned weekends 2 weeks in advance, and I loved her for it. We built our home together just outside Dallas, a modest 2-story with a backyard big enough for summer cookouts and a porch swing we swore we'd sit on more than we actually did. Inside, it was warm, lived in. Family photos on the walls, mismatched mugs in the cabinets, a bed that squeaked if you rolled over too fast. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And every time I left on a work trip, I left with the comfort of knowing she'd be there when I came back. And then there was Mark, my so-called best friend. We met in high school, back when we were both awkward kids pretending we had life figured out. He was the loud one, the funny one. I was the steady one, the guy who made sure we actually passed our classes. Somewhere in that balance, we became inseparable. He was there when I got my first car, when I failed my first job interview, when I broke my arm during a pickup basketball game. And when I met Emily, he was the first one I introduced her to. He shook her hand and said, "Don't worry, I'll look after this guy." It felt like a promise. Mark stood beside me as my best man at our wedding. He toasted us with words that made half the guests tear up. "Ryan and Emily," he said, "are the kind of couple that makes you believe in forever." I believed him. I believed in both of them. As the years passed, the three of us became a unit. Holidays, road trips, game nights. It was rare for there to be a big moment in our lives that didn't include Mark. He was Uncle Mark to my kids, the guy who showed up with too many Christmas presents, the one who stayed late after parties to help clean up. When my job started requiring more travel, he was the one I leaned on. "If anything happens, call Mark," I'd tell Emily. And she did. At least that's what I thought. Looking back, there were red flags, though at the time they looked like harmless quirks. Mark started spending more time at the house, even when I wasn't away. Sometimes I'd come home early from a trip and find him already there, sitting on the couch, a beer in his hand, making Emily laugh. I'd chalk it up to comfort. He'd always been welcome, always had a spare key, always treated our home like his own. That's what happens with family, right? Emily started mentioning him more too. "Mark helped me fix the fence," she'd say. Or, "Mark picked me up when my car battery died." I appreciated it. I thought, what a blessing it is to have a friend like that, someone who's got my back. When neighbors joked about how often they saw Mark around, I laughed along. "He's family," I'd say. Of course he's around. But sometimes, little things stuck in my mind, like the way she laughed harder at his jokes than mine, or how he knew details about our schedules I hadn't shared with him. Once, when I was packing for a trip, Emily joked, "Don't worry, Mark will keep me company." I laughed too, because what else was I supposed to do? The idea that either of them could betray me never crossed my mind. I trusted them. With my house, with my marriage, with my peace of mind. That's why I traveled without fear. I'd leave for a week, knowing Emily wasn't alone, knowing Mark was there to look after her. I thought it was the safest arrangement in the world. The truth is, I wore my trust like armor. I thought loyalty meant something, that history guaranteed safety. I thought being a good husband and a good friend made me immune to betrayal. So when that doorbell notification lit up my phone, I had no reason to expect anything but the usual, a package, a neighbor, maybe a kid playing with the doorbell. That's the life I thought I had. Secure, loyal, stable. A wife who loved me, a best friend who'd die before he hurt me. I didn't know then that the same man I called brother was the one sneaking into my home, and the same woman I called wife was smiling as she let him in. I thought they were the people I could trust most, but trust, I learned, is the easiest mask to wear when you're hiding betrayal. Suspicion doesn't scream, it whispers. After that first clip of Mark stepping into my home with a backpack on his shoulder and Emily smiling as she opened the door, I told myself 1,000 excuses. Maybe he was just dropping something off. Maybe she needed help with the porch light. Maybe the backpack was full of tools, not clothes. I told myself anything that would soften the jagged edge cutting into my chest. But excuses don't hold up against patterns, and the patterns were already forming. The Doorbell app kept pinging more often than usual. Some notifications were harmless: an Amazon delivery, a neighbor walking their dog, a kid tossing a basketball that bounced across the porch. But then the timestamps started lining up in ways I couldn't ignore. 9:30 at night, 11:15, even 1:30 in the morning, always when I was gone, always Mark. I started saving the clips automatically. At first it was instinct, a way of telling myself I'd review them later when I was thinking clearly. But the truth is, I already knew I wasn't imagining things. The camera was showing me more honesty than either of them ever would. One night, sitting in a hotel room in Denver, I got an alert just as I was about to go to sleep. I tapped the feed. The screen showed Emily stepping outside in her robe, glancing left and right like she was checking for headlights. A moment later, Mark jogged up the walkway, wearing that same baseball cap he always wore. She let him in without a word. The door closed. The porch light clicked off. The video ended. 10 minutes later, I got a text from Emily. Long day. Going to bed early. Love you. I stared at the message, my pulse pounding. In the background of the still frame the app saved, I could see her robe sleeve brushing against his jacket as they crossed the threshold together. She sent me good night while my best friend was in my house. I didn't respond. I just hit save. The unraveling became a routine. During the day, Emily and I talked like nothing was wrong. She told me about errands, about what she cooked for dinner, about a funny show she'd watched. At night, the Doorbell app told me the rest of the story. Mark's car pulling into the driveway. Emily opening the door before he could even ring. Sometimes he left within an hour. Sometimes his car stayed parked until sunrise. Neighbors started making offhand comments I couldn't ignore. Mrs. Jensen across the street asked if Mark had moved in part-time, since she saw his car parked outside so often. Another neighbor joked that Emily had 2 husbands, the way Mark was always around. I laughed along, pretending it was all harmless. But inside, every word sank like a stone in my stomach. The small details at home began changing too. A 6-pack of beer in the fridge, Mark's brand, not mine. A hoodie in the laundry I'd never worn. A second toothbrush tucked in the bathroom drawer that Emily brushed off as just a spare. And once, when I got back from a trip, I noticed the faintest smell of Mark's cologne on one of our towels. I tried testing Emily without making it obvious. I asked about her evenings, about who she saw. She mentioned friends, always the same names: Rachel, Mia, coworkers I'd never met. Never Mark, not once. The absence of his name was almost louder than if she'd admitted it outright. Mark played his role too. He'd text me while I was gone, asking if I needed anything. Want me to mow the lawn? Should I check the mail? Always casual, always helpful. Once he even joked, "Don't worry, man." "I'll keep an eye on her," I typed back. "Appreciate it." My hands shaking, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The worst was how normal everything felt when I was home. Emily was affectionate, warm, attentive. Mark acted like nothing had changed, like he hadn't been walking through my door at midnight while I was hundreds of miles away. It was almost enough to convince me I was paranoid, until the next trip, the next notification, the next clip saved to my phone. The unraveling reached its sharpest point one night in Houston. I'd left my phone charging on the nightstand when I went to shower. When I came out, the screen was lit up. Motion detected at your front door. I opened the feed with wet hands, towel slung around my shoulders. The porch light was off, but the infrared captured enough. Emily and Mark stood close together on the welcome mat, their heads bent, their voices low. The mic picked up fragments. Tomorrow. He lands late. I'll bring it. Then, clear as day, her laugh, soft, intimate, the kind I hadn't heard from her in months. And then it happened. She reached up and touched his face. Not a casual pat, not a friendly gesture. Her palm lingered on his cheek like she'd done it before. He leaned down, and though the angle cut off the kiss itself, the way their bodies shifted left no room for doubt. I froze. The steam from the shower cooled on my skin, the towel damp in my hands. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The moment I'd been dreading had arrived, and it was captured in crisp black and white on my phone screen. I didn't call her. I didn't call him. I didn't even scream. I just saved the clip. From that night on, I stopped pretending. I still played the part of the husband on the phone, the trusting friend when Mark texted, but inside, I knew. The unraveling wasn't suspicion anymore. It was confirmation, piled video after video, each one another thread pulled from the life I thought I had. I started building a private archive, not just clips, but timestamps, text messages, even screenshots of the smart lock showing guest code entries at hours I wasn't home. Every piece of evidence went into a folder labeled Home Receipts. I didn't know yet what I would do with it. All I knew was that silence was my weapon, and patience was my ally. Because the unraveling had shifted. I wasn't just watching them betray me anymore. I was preparing for the day I would press play and let the truth speak for itself. The unraveling had been slow, like water dripping into a crack until it widened. But the snap came fast. One clip, one moment that made denial impossible. It was a Thursday night, close to midnight. I was in yet another hotel room, the kind where the wallpaper peels at the corners and the hum of the AC is louder than your own thoughts. I'd just finished a late call for work when the Doorbell app lit up. Motion detected. I opened the feed, expecting the usual. Mark stepping onto the porch, Emily opening the door like she'd been waiting. But this time, there was no hesitation, no careful glances. She swung the door wide, smiled like a woman welcoming someone she loved, and he walked in carrying a duffel bag. Not a backpack, not a box, not tools. A duffel. The kind you pack for the night. The camera caught everything. The way he bent down to kiss her before stepping across the threshold. The way she touched his chest as if to pull him closer. The way they both ignored the glowing red ring of the camera as if they believed I'd never see it. They weren't cautious anymore. They weren't pretending. They were bold. I sat there, phone in hand, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. For weeks I'd been telling myself stories, softening the edges with maybes. Maybe they were just close. Maybe I misread the signals. But watching my wife kiss my best friend on my own porch, under my own roof, while I was miles away, that was the moment the stories ended. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't even call them. Instead, I hit save. The clip dropped into my archive, one more file in the folder I'd been building in silence. Proof. Undeniable, permanent, inescapable. I leaned back on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling. My marriage, my friendship, my trust, all of it had just collapsed in the span of 30 seconds. And yet, a strange calm settled over me. The kind of calm that comes when you stop fighting against the truth and finally accept it. They weren't mine anymore. Maybe they never really were. The next morning, Emily texted me as if nothing had happened. Hope your meetings went well. Can't wait to see you when you're back. I stared at the words, the casual sweetness of them, and almost laughed because I had just watched her "Can't wait" play out with Mark in real time. I typed back, "Me too," and let her believe I was still blind. Mark called that afternoon, checking in like always. Need me to grab anything at the house? His voice was easy, practiced. I gripped the phone so tight my knuckles turned white, but my reply was steady. All good. Thanks, brother. The word felt poisonous in my mouth, but I said it anyway, because now pretending was part of the plan. That was the moment I knew I wasn't just a husband anymore. I wasn't just a friend betrayed. I was something else, a strategist, a man with patience, a man with proof. I didn't need to confront them in anger. I didn't need to explode. The video had already spoken louder than any words I could ever say. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror before bed that night. My face was tired, my eyes heavy, but there was something new there. A steadiness, a clarity. The man staring back at me wasn't broken. He was sharpening, and as I slid my phone into the nightstand drawer, I whispered the truth to myself for the first time. They thought they had fooled me, but they had no idea. I had seen everything. I had the receipts. And from that moment forward, every step I took would be calculated. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't rage. I started planning. The night I watched Mark carry that duffel bag into my house, I realized the war wasn't going to be fought with shouting. It wasn't going to be fists through walls or middle-of-the-night confrontations that neighbors would gossip about. My war was going to be quiet, precise, calculated. When the video ended, I sat in the hotel room for a long time, the glow of my phone screen still burning in my eyes. I thought about every memory we had shared. My wife kissing me under that same porch light when we first moved in. My best friend raising a toast at our wedding. The holidays, the game nights. All of it had been corrupted. But grief wasn't useful. Anger wasn't useful. Proof was useful. And I had it. The next morning, I started organizing. I downloaded every clip from the Doorbell archive, labeling each one with the date, the time, and a short description. 9:32 p.m. Mark arrives with backpack. 11:07 p.m. Emily greets Mark, ushers him in. 2:06 a.m. Emily and Mark kiss on porch, enter with duffel. Each file was cataloged in a folder on a hidden drive, password protected, backed up to cloud storage they'd never find. Then I began the cross-referencing. Emily's texts lined up almost perfectly with the visits. The good night, going to bed early messages. The photos of cozy tea mugs and Netflix shows, sent within minutes of Mark walking through the door. I screenshotted everything, building a parallel trail of lies. The more I looked, the tighter the pattern became. I didn't just stop at the videos and texts. I pulled the smart lock logs from our home system, the ones that showed when guest codes were used. There it was. Entries at 11:14 p.m., 12:03 a.m. Times I wasn't there. I matched them against the doorbell footage, timestamp for timestamp. The lock said unlocked via guest code. The camera showed Mark stepping inside. The receipts stacked themselves without me needing to say a word. But I wasn't only building a digital case, I needed real-world confirmation. So I started talking, carefully, quietly. I asked neighbors harmless questions, playing the part of the clueless husband. Did you see any packages while I was away? Notice anyone parked in the driveway? Most gave me little, but every so often, I'd get something damning. Oh, Mark was over a lot last week, Mrs. Jensen said casually. He even brought in your trash cans. Another neighbor mentioned seeing Emily and Mark out late at night. Looked like they were heading somewhere together. I smiled, nodded, thanked them, then went home and wrote it all down. I knew emotion could ruin everything if I let it slip, so I played my role perfectly. When I came back from trips, I hugged Emily, asked about her week, sat down to dinner like nothing had changed. When Mark stopped by while I was home, I handed him a beer, clapped him on the shoulder, and called him brother. Inside, my stomach twisted, but outside, my mask never cracked. The calmer I seemed, the less they suspected. Behind the scenes, I scheduled an appointment with a divorce lawyer. Her name was Allison, a woman with sharp eyes and sharper instincts. I told her everything, showed her the videos, the texts, the lock logs. She didn't flinch. She slid the phone across the desk back to me and said, "You have enough to make this airtight. If you move carefully, she'll have no room to deny it." Allison explained how it would work. The footage was admissible. The logs were undeniable. The pattern of deception was clear. And Texas law was clear about adultery. It would tilt everything in my favor during divorce proceedings. Custody, property, finances. The key, she said, is to keep building quietly until you're ready to drop it all at once. So that's what I did. I kept gathering. I bought a second hidden camera and tucked it under the porch eaves. I linked it to the same app, but didn't tell Emily. It captured angles the doorbell missed, the driveway, the side of the house, the way Mark sometimes lingered on the porch with her before going inside. Every clip tightened the noose. At home, I noticed their confidence growing. Emily's phone stayed face down more often. She lingered in the shower longer. Mark stopped texting me as often during trips, probably figuring it would look suspicious. They thought they were getting smarter. They didn't realize they were just giving me more silence to work in. The hardest part was patience. There were nights I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Emily asleep beside me, my hands clenched into fists because I knew what she'd done just days before. There were mornings I shook Mark's hand, fighting the urge to crush it in my grip. But every time, I told myself the same thing. Don't break early. Don't give them the satisfaction of drama. Let the truth do the talking. Weeks passed. The archive grew thicker. The logs stretched longer. I started to see their routine so clearly it was almost predictable. He'd arrive around 10. She'd greet him within seconds. They'd disappear inside, sometimes until morning. And then, without fail, she'd text me something sweet to keep the illusion alive. It was like clockwork, and every tick of it was captured. I prepared everything else, too. Quietly, I opened a new bank account in my name alone. I moved my paycheck deposits there. I gathered documents, tax returns, insurance policies, property deeds, and stored them where Emily couldn't reach. I even made a copy of our home security system data, just in case she tried to erase anything later. The more I prepared, the calmer I became. Not because the betrayal hurt less, but because I finally had control. They thought they were pulling the strings, sneaking around while I was away. In reality, I was the one scripting the ending. One evening, Emily teased me while we sat on the couch. "You've been so quiet lately," she said, sipping her wine. "Are you hiding something?" I almost laughed. If only she knew. I leaned back, smiled faintly, and said, "Just tired." Long week. She nodded, kissed my cheek, and went back to scrolling her phone. I watched her, wondering if she was texting Mark in that exact moment, and all I felt was cold clarity, because soon her lies wouldn't matter. The receipts would. The truth was ready. The file was airtight. The lawyer was prepared. And I, the man they thought was blind, was just waiting for the right moment to press play. They thought I was still the trusting husband, still the loyal friend. But what they didn't know was that every late-night visit, every kiss on the porch, every lie in a text had already been turned into evidence. And when the time came, the quiet husband they underestimated would be the one to end their little secret. The day I decided to end it, the air in the house felt heavier, like even the walls were waiting for me to finally pull the trigger. I'd spent weeks collecting, saving, cataloging. The folder on my drive wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a weapon. Every clip, every log, every screenshot was a bullet. And together, they were enough to end both of them without me raising my voice once. I didn't tell Emily I'd retained a lawyer. I didn't tell her about the folder. I didn't even hint. Instead, I invited Mark over for dinner. The night before my next business trip, Emily's eyes flickered when I suggested it, but she agreed quickly, too quickly, like refusing might look suspicious. When Mark arrived, he wore that easy smile I'd once trusted, carrying a bottle of wine like nothing was wrong. We sat at the table, the three of us, eating takeout Chinese food, laughing at old stories. From the outside, we looked like the same trio we'd always been. Best friends, happy marriage, simple life. But underneath the surface, every smile was a mask, every laugh a lie. After dinner, I told them both I wanted to show them something funny from my last trip. I connected my laptop to the TV. The screen flickered, and instead of a comedy clip, the first video from the doorbell camera played. The room went silent. The footage showed Mark arriving at my door at 11:32 p.m., Emily opening it in her robe, ushering him inside. No sound, just video. But the truth didn't need volume. Emily's fork clattered onto her plate. Mark's smile froze. I clicked to the next file. Another clip. Mark carrying a backpack. Emily checking the driveway before letting him in. Timestamp glowing in the corner. Then another. The duffel bag. The kiss on the porch. The one that had shattered me in that hotel room. This time, I turned up the volume. The mic captured enough. His laugh, her whisper, the unmistakable murmur of, "He doesn't land until Thursday." I didn't look at them while it played. I just leaned back in my chair, arms crossed, watching their reflections in the TV screen. Emily's hand shot to her mouth. Mark's face flushed red, then pale. When the clip ended, the room was thick with silence. Finally, Emily tried to speak. "Ryan, I can explain." I cut her off with a calm wave of my hand. "Don't bother. I don't need explanations. I have receipts." Mark opened his mouth, shut it again, then muttered, "Man, it's not what it looks like." I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "It's exactly what it looks like. The difference is, now it's on record I let the silence sit. I wanted them to feel it, to drown in it." Then I stood, pulled a slim folder from the counter, and set it on the table. Inside were printed stills, smart lock logs, screenshots of her texts perfectly overlapping with his visits, pages upon pages, each one stapled and dated. Emily's hands shook as she flipped through them. Mark didn't even touch it. He just stared at the floor like a man waiting for his sentence. "This," I said evenly, "is already with my lawyer. This isn't a conversation. This isn't a warning. This is the end. Divorce papers are ready to file. And Mark, I paused, letting his name hang heavy in the air. Whatever friendship we had, it died the first night you used that guest code. You're not my brother. You're just a trespasser. With a smile, Emily's voice broke. Please, Ryan, don't do this. We can work it out. I shook my head. You made your choice the second you let him in. The only thing left is for me to make mine. And I didn't shout. I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. I walked over to the front door, opened it wide, and pointed outside. Leave. Mark hesitated, but Emily stood, tears streaking down her face, and followed. They didn't argue. They didn't plead again. They just walked out into the night. Two people stripped bare by their own actions. The sound of the door clicking shut behind them was the cleanest sound I'd ever heard. The next week was a blur of signatures and filings. My lawyer moved quickly. She'd been waiting for my signal. The videos and logs made the case airtight. Adultery wasn't just a suspicion, it was undeniable, time-stamped, recorded. The divorce process tilted in my favor. Property division, finances, everything that could have been messy was smoothed by the sheer weight of evidence. Emily had no leverage left. Word spread too. In our social circle, secrets don't stay buried once they've cracked open. Friends we'd shared holidays with turned cold toward them. Neighbors who used to wave at Emily avoided her eyes. Mark's reputation, once the loyal friend, dissolved overnight. People whispered, people judged, but the only judgment that mattered was mine, and I'd already passed sentence. The last time I saw Mark was in the grocery store weeks later. He froze when he spotted me in the aisle, a box of cereal in his hand, his face drawn and weary. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him, steady, until he turned and walked away, leaving the box behind. That was the real punishment. Not screaming, not fighting, just silence. The last time Emily tried to reach me was with a letter slipped under my door. Apologies, excuses, promises. I didn't open it. I dropped it, straight into the trash. Some words don't deserve to be read. In the end, my revenge wasn't in the evidence. It wasn't in the divorce. It wasn't even in exposing them. My revenge was in the calm, in the way I never raised my voice, never lost control, never let them see me break. They thought they had fooled me, thought they had power. But the moment I pressed play on that first video in front of them, the balance shifted. They were exposed, stripped of every lie. The truth had done all the talking, and the truth is louder than betrayal. The weeks after the divorce was finalized felt like stepping into a new house, familiar walls, but empty of all the noise that once filled them. The silence was heavy at first. I'd wake up in the mornings and half expect to hear Emily in the kitchen, the clatter of dishes, her laugh bouncing through the hall. Instead, there was nothing but the hum of the refrigerator and the creak of the porch swing outside. For a while, that silence felt like loss, but slowly, it became peace. I started reclaiming the space. I painted the bedroom a new color, took down the photos that told a story that wasn't true anymore, and filled the walls with things that mattered to me. My kids came over on weekends, and we made pancakes, the kind with too many chocolate chips, the kind Emily used to complain were too sweet. I let the sweetness stay. The house stopped feeling like a battlefield of memories and started feeling like mine again. At work, people asked about the changes, about the ring missing from my finger, about why Mark had disappeared from my life. I didn't give them the details. I didn't need to. It didn't work out, was all I said. Those who mattered didn't push for more, and those who wanted gossip weren't worth the truth. Emily tried reaching out a few times. A text here, a call there, once even showing up at the house when she thought I'd be gone. I never answered. I didn't need to scream or curse her name. The court documents, the footage, the silence of my refusal. That was my answer. Mark never contacted me again. From what I heard, he'd lost more than a friend. His own family cut him off. His job soured, and whatever thrill he thought he'd found in betrayal crumbled when reality settled in. Betrayal has a short half-life once the adrenaline fades. People talk about revenge like it's fire, loud, burning, destructive. But I learned it can be something else entirely. My revenge wasn't in shouting matches or dramatic confrontations. It was in patience. It was in letting my doorbell camera quietly gather truth, in watching their confidence grow while mine turned into calm preparation. My revenge was pressing play on a clip and letting silence do the cutting. The biggest lesson I learned was about trust. I had believed history guaranteed loyalty, that because Mark and I had grown up together, because Emily had married me under that oak tree, they were permanent fixtures in my life. But trust isn't guaranteed. It's earned over and over again. And the people who don't keep earning it, they don't deserve it. One evening, months later, I sat on that same porch swing with a coffee in my hand, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The doorbell camera's red ring glowed faintly beside me. It wasn't just a device anymore. To me, it was a witness, a reminder, proof that even when lies try to live in the dark, the truth finds a way to capture them. Emily and Mark had taken my trust, but they hadn't taken me. They hadn't taken my ability to rebuild, to laugh with my kids, to sit in silence and feel peace instead of suspicion. They hadn't taken my soul. And from that, I built something stronger than what they ever pretended to give me. They thought they had fooled me. What they forgot was simple. I kept the receipts, and from those receipts, I rebuilt a life they could never touch again. If you've ever been betrayed by the people you trusted most, remember this. You don't need to scream. You don't need to fight in the dark. Sometimes the best revenge is letting the truth speak for itself. If my story meant something to you, share it. Someone else out there needs to know that patience can be power, and silence can be the sharpest weapon of all.